To pray time for you. Please forbear, lock your door. God sits, grab your piece of cake and stay awake. Never sleep again. To pray time for you. Please forbear, lock your door. God sits, grab your piece of cake.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, Faccis Cinema. If you're new here and you haven't been here before, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Been doing a lot of great content, getting a lot of great feedback from everybody, and hopefully you like what you see and keep coming back for more. I'm in the middle of my Nightmare on Elm Street review series, starting with watch-alongs and then the review to follow thereafter. And I already did my watch-along with the absolutely fabulous Christian from Planet CHH. We had a great time. That was my first time ever meeting him. He, gracefully came on the channel. We sit back, hung out, watched the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and had a damn good time. So definitely check that out. I will leave a card above for that one. But today I am here to talk about A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984, the classic, written and directed by Wes Craven, ladies and gentlemen. As you all know, I am not the biggest Freddy Krueger fan. I am not the biggest Nightmare guy. I've seen all the movies, but it's just not a franchise that I find myself leaning towards. Honestly, when I watch these movies for this series, this is probably going to be the first time I've watched them in years. All of them except for the original I watch from time to time because it is such a classic. But today I'm going to talk about some fun facts, go over what I liked about the film, what I didn't, and, just give you my overall consensus of A Nightmare on Elm Street. All right, we already know that this stars Heather Langenkamp as final girl Nancy. We have John Saxon, the extremely talented character actor John Saxon, does a lot of the giallo Italian films. So if you ever go down that path, you'll see him in a lot of those flicks. But he is in this film, and he is fantastic. We have Johnny Depp making his acting debut. And, most of these big-time stars got started in a little film, like a little horror film, that launched their career. And Johnny, is very thankful that he got to be in this film and the trajectory that it gave his career. So, it's really cool to see Johnny Depp so young and so fresh. I believe he was 21 years old in this movie. So it definitely is, very nice to see him so young and fresh in this one. And of course, the iconic Robert Englund playing one of the most, iconic horror villains that there is. Definitely on the Mount Rushmore, Freddy Krueger. And he's very hard to replace, which is probably one reason we haven't gotten a new Nightmare film, anytime soon since the last remake. So it's just the way it goes. He's iconic, very hard to replace. In my opinion, I think that's the reason why we haven't got one. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the original classic, which had a budget of $1.8 million and made at the box office $57 million. So you can say this definitely was a huge success for Wes Craven and company. And you can see why it had, a sequel that came out the very next year in '85. So it's, and especially on Rotten Tomatoes, it currently has a 95%, which is amazing for a horror film, a slasher. Even though this one is kindly loosely slasher because we're dealing with a dream demon and a lot of other, psychological avenues that aren't in a typical slasher, but overall has the slasher vibes and has always been included in the subgenre of slasher. So that's crazy. IMDb has it at 7.4 out of 10. So, what are my thoughts going to be on this movie? Am I going to love it as much as all of these people and as much as most of you? Well, we're going to find that out. All right. So, the film was partially inspired by this Asian death syndrome where people were having nightmares and then they would die in the middle of their sleep during these nightmares. And that is actually a true story, and that is kind of how, this Nightmare on Elm Street movie was based. So it's a real thing. Obviously, it's not a dream demon. It's not really Freddy Krueger. Something happens during their nightmare, heart attack, hypertension, might be the same thing. I'm not a doctor, might be, who knows, but it happens. And then the Elm Street was actually the street that JFK was on when he was shot. And that is, considered where innocence ends, because JFK was, one of like the most iconic presidents that there was, and he seemed very innocent and very pure, and he was taken out on Elm Street just like Freddy was doing to all the teenagers that lived on Elm Street as well. So that is another fun fact that I learned along the way of digging deep into the Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Another thing, obviously, Freddy Krueger himself was actually, the name of a real-life bully that Wes Craven had, going through school. So that's where the name came from. And it also was inspired by when Wes was looking out of his bedroom window, he saw like the neighborhood drunk, I guess, who was just wandering around, and he had a fedora on, just like Freddy Krueger. And then he looked up at him, and, it shook him to his core. And that also inspired the Freddy Krueger character. And the red and the green sweater, the reason that he chose that, not because of Christmas colors, but because they actually clash. The two colors clash so much when they're put together. So that was like another avenue of something that just wasn't right. It was something just a little sinister leaking, beneath the surface that is going to get out there. And, the whole reason behind Freddy Krueger to me is very, very fascinating. I really enjoyed reading about this and learning more, because being a non-nightmare guy, I didn't know too much about, the subject at hand. So as I read into this and learned all this stuff, very interesting, definitely gave me a bigger appreciation for the movie and a bigger appreciation for Wes Craven as a director and a writer. He's put out some great films. He's put out some not so great films. He's given us Freddy Krueger. He's given us Ghostface. So 2 iconic slashers he's given us, plus a ton of other great films. Wes is sadly missed, and he was one hell of a director for sure. As the story goes, he worked at the school. They were sure that he was, he was a child murderer, and the parents of Elm Street had to take, justice into their own hands. They set him on fire. They killed him, and that's when he came back to haunt the children of Elm Street, to seek revenge for what the parents had done to him. And other movies in the series, try to get you to think that he was doing a little bit more to the children than he actually was. But in the original, he was just a child murderer. There was no funny business. That they blatantly came out and told you. So if you took it that way, that was up to you. But he was a child murderer. The parents took it upon themselves, did what they had to do, and they thought it was over with. But Freddy grows off the fear, and that is how he is in here. If you fear him, and that's whenever his powers continue to grow. But if you turn your back on him, which is kind of a tacky way to dispose of a horror icon, he won't be able to hurt you. At least in this movie, anyway. I thought Heather Langenkamp was okay as Nancy. She was believable, and I definitely loved her connection with Glenn throughout this whole movie. I thought they were great. That was Johnny Depp's character. I thought their, chemistry was great. Every time they were on scene together, you could just see like a spark. Like, it was real. And I think that's one thing about this movie that I really enjoyed, was the characters felt so real. They didn't feel like caricatures of something else. They felt like real people that you would know in real life. Did I think they seemed like high school kids? Not really, but in these movies, they never really do. So that's something that you have to look past for sure. It's just, there's so many iconic kills in this movie, which is another reason I think it is one of, the horror fans' favorite films. We got the Tina death, where the room was upside down. She was laying on the floor, and the cameraman was strapped to the ceiling as the bottom spun around, and she's getting ripped open by Freddy during the dream. She suffered vertigo during that, and she was 75% of her emotions was actual fear. She was actually afraid for her life during this shooting. So that adds to the tension, that adds to the effect of this whole scene. And then it works so well because Rod's just laying there. He has no idea what's going on. her body just drops on the blood, and he's out of there because he knows he's going to get convicted of something that he didn't even do. And he's trying to tell Nancy later in the film that there was somebody else in the room. And she's just like, how? You were the only two in there. And he knows, he felt it. There was somebody else in the room. And, you know, he's going to find out really, really soon, not long after that, once he's taken into custody, there was somebody in the room for sure. And the guy that played Rod was actually, you know, a homeless guy. Before he was cast for this role, he was just a homeless guy. He was doing drugs on the streets. And then on set, he was high most of the time. So during that jail scene, he was actually stoned. So who knows, man? He might have been hallucinating the whole damn thing. Who knows? But that scene is whenever he, you know, Freddy sneaks in through the jail cell, looks up out the window because Nancy knew it was going to happen. And then they wrap the sheet around him and act like Rod killed himself by hanging himself. And that's why nobody believes these kids, because there's no proof that they're not doing it themselves. You know, there's no proof that Rod didn't kill Tina. There's no proof that Rod didn't hang himself, because the adults cannot see Freddy. They don't believe them. And I skipped the part. The whole Tina scene, fantastic. Whenever she goes, she's dreaming. She goes outside, walking down the alley. You see Freddy with his stretched out arms. Scared the shit out of me when I saw that for the first time. I had a VHS tape called Boogeyman, I think it was called. It was like a compilation of a bunch of different horror movies. And that was the scene that they chose to put in there for A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I can damn now see why they put that scene in there. He's chasing her. He's laughing. He's maniacal. You know, he cuts Tina. Watch this. Cuts his finger off. Blood squirting out. She tackles her, pulls off his face. You can see like a skull. It's just, that's something that Freddy brings to the table that Michael and Jason don't. Freddy has character. He has, you can see his emotions. He doesn't have a mask. He has a voice. So, yeah, I mean, what he's going to do to you, he's going to tell you. You know what I mean? And he's cracking jokes, and he's really having a good time doing this to the children of Elm Street. And I think that's another positive for this franchise. I know it gets worse as the movies go along down the line, but in the beginning, when Freddy was serious, so scary. But then he could drop one of those funny jokes, and it worked. Another amazing scene in this movie, the bathtub scene. You know, it's only half a tub, and then a guy puts his hand through the other side. It was built up off the ground. I learned this from Christian. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate you spitting the facts when we did our watch-along. So that's amazing. The guy's hand came up and then went back down, like closed it off. So cool. I mean, he's invading her privacy. Like, that's personal space. You're naked in the tub, and Freddy's right there between her legs. You know, that's a woman's safe space, and you're not even safe in the tub. So Freddy can get you anywhere, anytime you fall asleep. So it's just, it's really scary when you think about it, because Michael and Jason, you can run from, you can get away from them, but you always have to sleep. There's no way you can't sleep. We're humans. We need that to function. So Freddy knows that he can just lay and wait in your subconscious until you fall asleep. And then in the dream world, he can do whatever he wants. The boiler room setting, creepy as hell. It's amazing. The lighting, the cinematography, it's so beautiful. It works so well, and you just gotta love it. Another great scene, the Johnny Depp scene. They tipping 500 gallons of fake blood. I mean, upside down. It freaking got over everything. It was ruining cameras. It was getting all over the set pieces. It was a damn mess. I mean, it was not enjoyable to work with at all. I believe it was like corn syrup and then the food coloring and whatnot. So it definitely did a lot of damage, but it is very effective kill. He's laying on the bed, watching like the Miss Universe pageant, get sucked down. My man Johnny Depp, before he was Captain Jack Sparrow, getting fucking wasted on the open seas, my lad. I don't know why I sound like a leprechaun, but it was amazing. It was the blood was just shooting up. Like I said, it was actually dripping down. It was so many cool camera tricks in this movie. It just adds to the charm, adds to, you know, the legacy of this movie for the horror genre. It was amazing. Another one, the sticky staircase scene later with Nancy. It was made up of Bisquick oatmeal. $12 is all it cost to make that iconic squishy, gross fucking squishy step scene. That's amazing. I'll tell you what. The only really downfall for me for this whole movie, probably the third act kind of tails off for me a little bit. It gets a little Home Alone-y before Home Alone even existed. You know, she's setting up the booby traps and shit, going through all of that. Pulling him out of the dream was amazing, and I loved it. But it did get a little bit corny at the end, and then the way she defeated Freddy by turning her back to Freddy, and then he tried to jump at her, and then he's like, and he like fucking disappears and shit. It's fucking pretty weird. But then the ending, which a lot of people hate, and I'm not a big fan of it either. You know, the mom's out there waving. You see Glenn, Tina, Rod. They're all driving away in the car. The convertible hood comes up. It looks like Freddy's sweater. And then they show the little girls jumping rope. You get the fog glaze over that's in all this, like the dream sequences. That's beautiful to look at. And then the mom gets pulled through the window with Freddy laughing. And it's clearly a blow-up doll. And so the whole ending was a dream in Nancy's head is what I'm getting. I don't know how to take that. I guess that's for your own personal preference how to take that. But the ending kind of lets me down a little bit, for sure. But overall, I mean, this movie's fantastic. And the mother, holy shit, she fucking annoying bitch, dude. Always drinking, alcoholic. What happened in the past totally scarred her for life. And then she kind of takes that on Nancy. I know she was trying to protect her and everything, but it ain't going to work. He came back and they just don't believe her, you know? But overall, it's a great film. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think the last act kind of drops it down from being a perfect 5 out of 5 for me, but it's so close. The score, very underrated. I'm still a Halloween theme above it, but it's up there, dude. It's probably tied with like the Friday the 13th score. And then plus we get the 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. It's been playing in the background this whole time. So it's amazing. And another fun fact before I let you guys go, the crew was actually afraid filming this. Even though they knew everything was going to happen and they knew exactly how it did work, they were still afraid of the filming and everything that was going into it. So that's just saying how scary this movie actually was. And like I said, it was a hit. It created, let me see, there's 9 movies in this franchise, if I'm not mistaken. So it created 8 more after this one. So it obviously did something right. Well, I need to know your thoughts on the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Let me know down in the comments below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? How many stars out of 5 would you give it? Let me know down below. Let's get the conversation rolling. No, I'm not a closet Freddy guy. Just spitting the truth. Telling you how I feel about a movie. That's it. I love every one of you. If you want to support me, links are below to my Patreon and my Buy Me a Coffee. All support is greatly appreciated. Next up, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Freddy's Revenge, live watch along with Faccis Cinema, Jason and Callie, the newlyweds. Going to be a good time. Hopefully you guys will be there Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I love you freaking guys so much. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for all that you do. Would not be here without you. Have sweet dreams.